Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars. I'm your host, Mansa Musa. When we think of the death penalty, when we think about executing people in the United States of America, we oftentimes come down on two different sides, pro and anti-death penalty. We oftentimes come down on in this manner because we have these feelings about what a person did versus what's getting ready to be done to that person. At no time in this process do we think that the person that's getting ready to be executed is actually innocent, that the person that's being executed actually has not done anything, as they languish away on death row, waiting for someone either to decide not to execute them or to execute them, and when they're going to sign the death warrant. Here joining me today to talk about a case that's dealing with death penalty and death row is Allison Dean. She's here to talk about Tim Young. Tim Young is a inmate or prisoner on death row in San Quentin. Tim Young has been on death row in San Quentin for a number of years, and more importantly, Tim Young is claiming his innocence. All evidence creates a lot of doubt as to his guilt. In this country, you're supposed to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. If doubt exists, then you got to be found not guilty. So why is Tim Young still on death row when all this doubt exists? Thank you, Allison, for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right, let's start by telling our audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am the campaign chair for Tim Young for his freedom campaign that he has. It just mostly involves social media presence, speaking with journalists, helping to do outreach for him, because when you're incarcerated, you need somebody on the outside. He doesn't have any family support, so he does a lot of work with journalists, and I found him through a college course that I did. So we've become friends after that, and I just have stuck with him because I really believe in him, and I believe in his story, and I believe in his innocence.
Okay, let's talk about that. Because as I open up, we have in this country people that's pro and anti-death penalty. But when you come in this space, it very rarely is in the space of innocence and guilt. It's very rarely in the space of did the person commit the crime or did the person not commit the crime. It's more about moral. Some people morally don't think a person should be executed, and some people think that they should be shot on the spot. Now let's talk about Tim's case. All right. Unpack what he was charged with and what evidence they say existed to find him guilty, to your knowledge.
Yeah, so Tim was convicted of a homicide, multiple homicides in Tulare County, California, which is more in the Central Valley of California. It's a very, very racist area. Tim is Black, and he is a minority in that area. He was convicted off of the statement of a jailhouse informant, someone who was coerced by the police to give information, trained by police to give information because they couldn't solve the case. They didn't have proper evidence against him. The only physical DNA evidence they had to convict him was a mixture that was complicated, couldn't be really determined as him. So they were definitely using this jailhouse informant, training him, interviewing with him, working his story because they needed a conviction.
Mm-hmm. So basically, the physical evidence was inconclusive.
Yes.
So all right, and because the physical evidence was inconclusive, they went and got a jailhouse informer to fabricate evidence against him. And
yeah.
All right, to your knowledge, do y'all have history on this person? Is this person a known? Has this person been used before as a jailhouse informant? Has he been in cases before?
Yeah, so the jailhouse informant that was used to incarcerate Tim was well known by police, had a deal with police in the area. He was facing another charge himself, and made this deal with his cop, his handler, in order to convict him. It was like a well known in the area that he was an informant and he could be an ally to the police. So,
All right, so in terms of Tim's initial attorneys that represented him at trial, because it stands to reason that if this person has this kind of background, then it's obvious that he would probably perjure himself, or it would be enough information out there to impeach him. What about his initial attorneys at trial? Did he get adequate representation?
He did not have adequate representation. He did have a lawyer that he retained himself after he had started representing himself in court. But that lawyer really didn't advocate for him. The legal team wasn't advocating for him. It was really complicated because he was being tried with his brother. They were both being tried. They're both incarcerated on death row at San Quentin currently. And there was issues because the brothers wanted the trials to be separated in order to actually have a fair trial, and the judge refused. There was a lot of issues within the actual process of the court proceedings that just were completely unjust and unfair. Yeah, it was not adequate representation from his legal team.
And how long has he been on death row?
He has been on death row since 2005, I believe, is when, or 2000, no, 2005 was when he was on death row. He's been incarcerated since 1999. He was being held in Tulare County for many years.
Right. And so now he's in San Quentin, on death row in San Quentin?
Yes, he's at San Quentin.
Okay. Now, how old is he?
He is 53.
Okay, so he's 53 years old. And you say both him and his brother are on death row together?
Yes.
All right, now, in terms of what's going on with this case right now, because as I was reading the some of the background information, it's like, to me, the information or the evidence that they relied on is shaky at best, and it created a lot of doubt. So, what is his advocacy in terms of what is he advocating as far as his innocence? What is he highlighting, other than like the fact that they went and got an informant to fabricate?
Yeah, so they have the informant to fabricate the story. A lot of it's racially motivated, of course. He has a lot of evidence pointing to his day-to-day that he did, the actual day of the crime. They're trying to make these claims about where he was, but he has like doctor's notes, work notes, actual documented evidence.
Physical evidence, yeah, right.
Yeah. And there's also just issues within the way that the proceedings went. The evidence was completely mishandled the entire time that they did the investigation. There's documents of the evidence room paperwork that's been whited out. The dates have been changed. The names have been changed. It's entirely possible that evidence was being held by police the same time it was also being tested for DNA, and we have no idea. So cross-contamination is completely plausible.
Right.
Tulare County, again, like I said, is majority white, majority Hispanic, very, very small African-American population. So a lot of what Tim is trying to focus on is like the racial motivations of the case. He's really interested in the Racial Justice Act and filing an appeal alongside that in order to get kind of more outreach on his case and word on his case.
And did they live in this county, or was they, is this way? So do the police know him him and his family? Have he always had issues with them?
He did have issues with the police. Him and his brother weren't an issue to police, but because you're Black in Tulare County, you're known.
Yeah. Obvious candidate, obvious. Yeah. All right. So, and in terms of going forward, so what type of appeals do we have in effect, or do we have in effect, or is he waiting on trying to develop an appeal process to get some appeals? Or where is that in terms of his overall legality? Because I know at some juncture they're gonna issue a death warrant if he don't get no traction.
Yeah. So for him right now, really seeking pro bono representation for an appeal. He has a state appointed attorney who is really dragging their feet in terms of this, because that's part of the process. They're a representative of the state. Like their interest
Right.
is not in death row inmates. Their interest is in whatever the state wants. So they're really dragging their feet on that. Like she wants to wait 10, 15 years to even file an appeal. So if he gets pro bono representation on this, then you can speed along that appeal process, work in the Racial Justice Act process. Like that is really what he would need.
Right. And in terms of him, how's his health?
His health has actually been really declining. He during the COVID pandemic, he was infected very early. COVID inside was way different than what it was out here for us. He has long COVID. He's had a lot of health deterioration because of it. He recently had a lot of issues where he wasn't receiving proper medical care and had to file a lot of appeals to see an outside practitioner. So he's really hoping they're actually doing a switch out of San Quentin. Death row inmates are being moved out of San Quentin to different prisons throughout the state of California, per Gavin Newsom's new plan to do a rehabilitation at San Quentin. And that sounds like maybe it's a good thing, but he's still going to be incarcerated. Right. He's going to be in a different space with new people away from his community because his community's here. I'm in San Francisco. A lot of his community's in San Francisco, Santa Cruz, the Bay. So without that, he's really going to suffer. We don't know what it's going to look like in terms of his incarceration. But right now he is really suffering medically and not receiving adequate care, which is a big struggle.
And I'm going to go back and revisit something you said earlier. You said that how you got involved in a class project, but then you said that you believe in his innocence. Why do you believe in his innocence? What is it about this case that make you say that you believe in it? Because this is where people that I've known from interviewing and getting feedback, this is where the line is often drawn at in terms of people's views on the death penalty. So why do you believe in his innocence?
I believe in his innocence because I believe in the malfeasance of the judicial system, and I believe in the issues of his case. If you just look at it from like a boilerplate point of view, there was issues with witnesses, there was the issues with the jailhouse informant, the evidence tampering is questionable enough, the timeline doesn't add up. And I got to know Tim and I got to know him as a person. And I have absolutely there's no way in my mind that he could do something like this. And I don't think that you sit on death row at San Quentin for over 20 years and work every single day to make your story known and to make your innocence known and not actually be innocent. I think that that's abhorrent. I don't think anyone could actually do that. So I believe that innocence fluctuates. I don't think that we should only allow those who are innocent to be to have the death penalty taken away. I think that that's a criminal act in itself. I don't think we should be using the death penalty on anyone, especially not innocent people. And I think that our view of innocence needs to change a little bit. Even if there was someone who committed this crime and went through the process that he went through the courts, it would still be unfair. It's an unjust trial, and he at least deserved that. So if the crime was committed by someone, the way the trial went on was wrong. But I do believe that Tim is innocent. I do not believe that he committed this crime. And I think it was just a snowball effect of people using what they could because they needed a conviction. This was the biggest homicide case in the Central Valley ever up until recently. So they needed a solution, and Tim happened to be their choice.
And so from your point of view, he never received a fair trial. And that the evidence, and it's common practice that they use jailhouse informers. I know I was locked up 48 years prior to getting released 3 years ago, and I recall numerous cases where a person be on the chair and they write the state's attorney because they know the person they're trying to get, or a person might have an open case. They write the state's attorney and tell them that they got evidence that they heard the person say. And once the state's attorney get them and talk to them, they realize that they don't have that, but opportunity, it go from what we have to the opportunity to what we can get. It go from we got actual evidence to opportunity to manufacture evidence. And that sounds like what happened in Tim's case. But at the rate that things are going, and as you said earlier, that they're going to move him to another place in one of the existing plantations in California. How would that impact his defense, to your knowledge?
I don't know if it would necessarily impact his defense. He would still have the same representative who's she has visited him, I think maybe twice since she's been his lawyer, and she's been technically his lawyer for, I think, 10 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I don't think it's going to impact his defense. It's just going to make things more complicated for him. It's going to make communication more complicated with his support system. It's going to isolate him. It's going to be a different environment that he has to get used to. I mean, he spent 20 plus years now in this space. And when you're on death row and you're in the condemned unit, you spend 23 hours of your day in there, usually, sometimes 25, 24. You're spending the whole day in that cell. That's all you get. So to have that and then completely switch up what his day-to-day is going to look like, I know it's going to have an effect on him. I know it's going to change how he's able to function. Like, it's very worrisome. So I'm just really, really hoping that my work and the work of others can help him gain traction. He does a lot of writing. He is a poet. He publishes essays. He's trying to get his name out there. He has a lot of projects in the work. Like, we're trying to do enough outreach that like somebody sees what I see and what others see about him, and the fact that he is innocent and should not be on death row. No, should not be incarcerated at all. Should definitely not be on death row.
And I was just at a gathering with a guy, Hinton. He was on death row in Alabama, and he wrote a book called The Sun Shines. And he was talking about that whole thing. He was innocent, and after being on death row 35 years, as opposed to retrial, when the fabricated evidence came up, and they realized that the number one evidence they used against him was a gun that could not, and never could have been used to commit the crime. Once he had finally got the court to rule on that they have to test the gun, they decided to not try him, so they wouldn't have to pay him. And and like in Tim's case, where's the informer? What's going on with the informer? Now, has he become a robo informer? Is other people on death row that he went and mysteriously found his self in their presence and told that what's going on with him? Do y'all have any knowledge of what's up with him?
Yeah,
that might go a long way in terms of showing how the state do their business.
Yeah, so part of the class that I did was reinvestigating Tim's case. We started from the beginning. We did the whole thing over again to see where malfeasance was. The jailhouse informant is out. He is out in the world. He did the 5-ish years that it took from when he came to police to when the trial ended. He was being held by Tulare County at that time. The judge decided that was punishment enough. That young brothers get life in prison, they get death, but he's fine. And he's a white man. And he has served his sentence. He did his due diligence. He listened to the law. He can be free. He walked free.
And then in terms of the fabrication, so is he's saying what is it that he's saying? How he get the knowledge of this particular offense?
Yeah. So we believe in the campaign. He was arrested actually the night of the murders and was in the back of a cop car. We believe that he heard information being divulged on radio between police officers, and that's how he gained information about this. He himself claims that him and the Young brothers committed these murders together. So he is an accomplice. He says that he was there, and yet he is walking free. He's not on death row.
Yeah, and he don't have, not only he ain't on death row, he didn't give a significant penalty for his alleged involvement in these homicides that as an accessory or or being complicit in directly being involved. Going forward, what do you want our audience to know about Tim, and how can they support his campaign?
Yeah, so we have a website, timothyjamesyoung.com is his website. His Instagram is freetimyoung. It's just about outreach at this point. We need people to know his story, resharing our content, signing a petition to get his voice out there. This is all on our website and on our Instagram. He is an artist. He is a poet. He's a wonderful poet. He writes wonderful essays as well. He speaks on abolition. He speaks on racial justice. He speaks on environmentalism as well, actually, is a big part of him. So just having people know that they can reach out to him and they can write to him. He has a few letter campaigns with various museums. We're working on a project with a different university. He is the solitary gardener at UCSC, which is a wonderful project by Jackie Samel, who is an abolitionist environmentalist. Yeah, I just think getting to know him and knowing he's a person and he's a person who deserves better, is kind of how I view it. Is he is somebody that you can talk to. He's somebody that wants you to reach out. He's somebody who wants to tell his story, and it's up to us to help then share that.
Thank you, Alice. There you have it. The real news and Rattling the Bars. Imagine if you found yourself waking up one morning, somebody said that you committed a crime, a heinous crime, or murder. They lock you and your brother up, and unbeknownst to you, someone is trying to avoid coming to prison, so they fabricate a story about you, and you have no knowledge of this. But more importantly, you have knowledge of everywhere you've been at that time. But yet, 20 years later, no one believes you in the system that's supposed to protect you. The same system that you're supposed to get due process of law. The same system that you're supposed to get fairness. The same system that says that you can only be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But all this doubt that exists in Tim's case, as outlined by Allison, shows that they didn't get it right. But imagine that you find yourself 25 years later on death row. So your choices are fight for your freedom or wait for the death warrant. Would you be inclined to be supporting capital punishment? Would you be inclined to support executing people if you found yourself in that position, or any number of your family members? Thank you, Alice, for helping us come and highlight this case and educating our audience on what is going on with Tim Young's case.
Of course, thank you.
And we ask that you continue to support the Real News and Rattling the Bars. It's only on the Real News and Rattling the Bars that you're going to get this kind of information. Allison told you that she believes in this case by virtue of being exposed to the case and looking at the information. The information got her convicted. It wasn't nothing else. And then as a result of being involved with this case, she come to see a human being. But it started with the information. The information, and this is what we provide. We provide information to allow you to make an informed decision, to make the kind of decision Allison is making now, to be able to support and help and educate the public about this travesty and this injustice. We ask that you continue to support the Real News and Rattling the Bars, because guess what? We are really the news. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work. So please, tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to the Real News Network. Solidarity forever.